Welcome everyone to our episode 108, Why Your Emotions Make You Sick. We are going to answer this question and we are going to go deep into the layers of how our emotions relate to everything that happens in our body, how this somatic expression or psychosomatic expression of what we feel, and if we swallow, if we neglect, if we reject any kind of emotion, it is going to be translated into a symptom that many times we look for the quick remedy or for the pill or for any kind of treatment that quickly make us feel better, but we don't process what is happening inside of us. We don't process the emotion, we don't process the root cause. And as the science goes into this epigenetic mode, we are peeling the layers of how these epigenetics of our emotional trauma or emotional state is being translated and is being impacted in our body, in certain organs, in certain regions of the body. And we're going to review a very, very special article and a very special study, clinical trial, where they observe the emotions translated into the body and how it activates certain regions and it deactivates certain regions. So we are going to talk about all of those things. We're going to go deep into the science of how we link and connect and coordinate all of these correlation events. There is a clear correlation. Let's start with that, of your mind, between your mind and your body, and of course your spiritual side, of course, what you feel, how you feel in terms of the symptoms, the pains, the aches that you are struggling with. Oftentimes it's difficult to recognize, and we are challenged by many of these things that we cannot process, and how we are expressing these emotions. Many times we pretend to be fine and we just take the pill, we just take the quick remedy, the band-aid, and instead of using these band-aids, let's start diving into deeper in how we feel and processing the things that we will clear up faster and without damaging your body with side effects. So emotions coordinate our behavior and the physiological states during survival salient events and pleasurable interactions. So this is a fact, and we know that because of the many experiences that we have lived. And even though we are not often consciously aware of our current emotional state, such as, for example, anger or happiness, these mechanisms of the energy of the emotion are giving rise to this subjective sensation in our body that many times remains unresolved, and we swallow the energy of the emotions. So here in this article, it is discussed a mapping of the emotion, where it is located, how it activates certain regions. And it is an extremely important tool that will reveal that different emotional states are associated with how we feel, with even across cultures, even across races, even across regions of the globe. We express many of the basic emotions in the same activation regions of the body, and we also deactivate many regions of the body across the world. And we could be witness of that in the pandemic state, where many people were feeling afraid, anxious, a lot of loneliness, a lot of isolation, anxiety, depression, etc. All of those things now are being translated into emotional symptoms and into chronic diseases, and sadly into a very high rate of deceased people, of several and multiple causes, but we can identify many of these illnesses and diseases that we are seeing now are completely linked to the states of the emotions that we have to process during these past 2 or even 3 years, because still there are many people that are stressed due to this pandemic state that we lived. So monitoring all of our emotions and how they are triggered in bodily sensation brings a unique tool for emotion research, and it give us the specificity that we need many times in order to process many of these emotions and how we are responding, how we are coping with them. And also that this is the most important message that I want to translate to you, give you, or try to pass to you, that our emotions are telling us something. They are a tool, they are a GPS, they are the root cause of many of the chronic diseases, of many of the things that are happening within you. They start to trigger biomarkers, they start to trigger molecules, they start to trigger many of the things that are going to cascade into several other illnesses, sadly. So let's go for the experiments and how these people observe that. And to talk about this, the article that I use was in the is from the author of Pneumema, and is from 2014. Is Bodily Maps of Emotions, is from PNAS, Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, and is very, well, still recent for what we are now discovering and how we are more, now we have a lot more information in terms of the specificity of the organs that these emotions trigger also. So all of these data were acquired, were retrieved from software that is called M-Body, and they were developed for the purposes to study the mapping of these emotions. So in this tool that was electronic or computerized, participants were shown 2 silhouettes of the human body and an emotional stimulus between them. The bodies were abstract and they were in 2D, so they had to illuminate the body on how they cognitively have the processing of the emotion in certain regions and patterns of sensation in their body. So these also make the participants more aware of the interoceptive skills that they have, because not every day we have the opportunity to detect our emotions, to have a pause, to identify, to label, to recognize that we are feeling certain emotions. And these participants were asked to inspect the stimulus and use the mouse of the mouse in the computer, the mouse in the software, to paint the bodily regions that they typically felt becoming activated on a silhouette in the left body and deactivated on the right body when viewing it. And then they merge those 2 images, and the map of the emotional state was presented into a range of colors that we are going to observe at the end of this video. I'm going to show you the images and how it looks, and it is just amazing how we can really identify our emotions if we just have some time to reflect on them. So the experiment number 1 was an experiment where people were presented with words, just the word. Participants evaluated their bodily sensations, or BSM, associated with 6 basic emotions: anger, fear, disgust, happiness, sadness, and surprise. And 7 non-basic emotions: anxiety, love, depression, contempt, pride, shame, and envy, as well as a neutral state, so be just indifferent. Each word was presented once in a random order, so participants didn't know which emotion was going to be presented to them or asked to be translated into a bodily sensation or either activation or deactivation. And the participants needed to assess which bodily regions typically felt becoming activated or deactivated in the feeling of each emotion. The second experiment was a guided emotional imagery represented in short stories, reading short stories, drawings, and short dialogues, describing short emotional and non-emotional episodes. Each vignette elicited primarily one basic emotion or a neutral emotional state, and 5 of these vignettes or stories per emotions category were presented in random order again, and that text driven with images also induced trigger heightened responses in somatosensory and autonomic nervous system, as well as brain activation. So this is extremely important because this is the measure of the body region that you are being triggered and activated by simply a story, short dialogues, and a representation of a drawing, and how your brain also is becoming activated in these kind of stories. Experiment 3 was emotional movies, and the stimuli here was very short, just 10-second movies, eliciting discrete emotional states, and they were derived from an fMRI study assessing the brain bases of discrete emotions, and where they were shown to trigger a reliable pattern of discrete emotional responses. And given the inherent difficulties associated with eliciting anger and surprise with a movie stimuli so short of about 10 seconds, these emotions were excluded from the study, and 5 stimuli were chosen for each emotion category. In these emotional movies, the emotions that were asked to be represented were fear, disgust, happiness, sadness, and a neutral emotion. Experiment 4 was embodying emotions from facial expressions. The stimuli were pictures of basic facial expressions: anger, fear, disgust, happiness, sadness, and surprise, and a neutral emotional state. Each posed 2 male and 2 female actors. When these multiple stimuli from one category were used in those experiments, the subject data were averaged across the stimuli, eliciting each emotional state before random effect analysis. And all of these emotions were analyzed, and they were mixed into a matrix of how this activation of the 4 experiments measure more the activation or deactivation of certain body regions. More or less, they were 300 participants, and the categories and the different experiments were divided into 36 approximately subjects, male and female. And of course, they were from different regions of Europe and Asia. They were Sweden, Finnish, and Taiwanese people. And we will have a map of these emotions, so we can now extract this information and see how different regions globally express certain basic emotions in the same way in our body. So these maps reveal association of these basic emotions and complex emotions and constitute a very accurate description of this bodily sensation. All of these data highlight the consistent patterns of body sensation associated with each of the 6 basic emotions. And all of these sensations are represented in categories in the body. These maps are in line with evidence from brain imaging and behavioral studies. So also your behavior is going to be impacted, highlighting this categorical structure of emotion systems and neural circuits supporting this emotional processing and suggesting that this information regarding emotions is also represented in embodied somatotopic format. What does that mean? This means that our emotions, what we feel either by words that we are speaking, that we are using, short stories that we read, either in social media or in any other kind of form, short clips of news mainly, how they activate us, and how the expression of people outside, of people of our own family, of people that we are being more in contact with in our jobs, in wherever you are interacting with people, are also absorbed and translated into emotions that we are feeling if we have time, or we are not feeling and we are just swallowing all that energy. And then that energy has to be processed, has to be expressed. It will have a result. And this is the extrapolation of things that are happening between the pseudo abstract world of emotional responses and the biochemical world of how we are expressing these kind of emotions. So it is extremely important that we notice this, that we really represent these emotions, and that we make a map and we associate the emotions with what we are feeling. So that is the extremely important expression of how we are allowing ourselves to process the emotions, and what is the role of building up all of these feelings and how are they going to impact us. So this also is translated into stressful states and many responses of hormones and bodily sensations that we are going to translate into our body. So if we are watching too much news, if we are reading too much news, if we are scrolling too much news, and mainly now that the world is becoming chaotic and many of these expressions of the repression of the emotions of these 2 or 3 years are being translated into anger, into envy, into disgust, into hate, into rage, into separation. All of these things that we are seeing have an explanation on these kind of emotions, and you will see it in the map. So all of these behaviors, all of these physiological responses, and many of the chronic diseases that we are seeing spiking right now are reasonably linked with the variety of emotions that we are or we were feeling and we didn't have time to process. So it is making us more conscious. It is making us more responsible. It is making us more aware of what we are feeling and where we are feeling these emotions. That is the most beautiful example of how we are processing these emotions. So you can see here, this map and this We are going to see this map at the end, but we are going to start with the beats per minute. And this is a scale, this is a different scale of the one that we are going to analyze later, but this will translate to the rates per minute, to the beats per minute of each emotion. So don't pay attention too much to these 8, 2, 4, 6 beats per minute. This is just the scale, a scale that this trial handle, but we will relate this or correlate this with the exact amount of beats per minute that we are feeling with each emotion. Just look at anger, how high it is in terms of the beats per minute. Fear, sadness, all of these emotions that are labeled as negative emotions, but we have to feel them also, and raise the level of our cardiac response, and also alterate the response and the regulation of our breathing. So we are going to see how impactful they are. Look at these emotions, negative also, disgust, and positive ones, happy and surprise, how they activate our heart response. Happy is a regulated emotion, as you can see, is more or less in the middle range of how your beats per minute are being expressed, are being felt. And we are going to see now more in terms of a scale that we can translate, that we can understand more clearly. So look at this and look at the time. 60 seconds, 60 seconds of feeling anger is spiking your heart up to 170 beats per minute. That is like running at a very high speed. And that's the rate that your heart races by being angry, 60 seconds. If you keep on that emotion, imagine what that is going to do to your heart. So the faster you learn to process these kind of emotions, the easier you will be able to regulate your response and to regulate your threshold of the emotions that you are feeling. Disgust. Disgust is an emotion that is also raising your heart rate very heavily. Let's say not as much as anger, but pretty much above 100 beats per minute, which is also like performing a moderate physical activity. And disgust, rejection, neglect, hate, all of those emotions are in the same category in terms of the spiking of your heart and the dysregulation of your breathing also, because this is this has a direct correlation between your breathing and the emotions that you are feeling. Now, this is a little bit difficult to understand, but I will try to simplify it in the best way possible. The colors that are blue, in the blue range, and dark blue, lighter blue, and we are moving to green, then to yellow, orange, red, and intense red, let's say. We are going to have the emotions that trigger more according to the experiment that was used. For example, here, words. Words, in terms of anger, it was one of the emotions that was more representative in terms of the activation of the body parts that we are going to observe at the end. So this is going to be translated. This is just to see the activation. This is just to understand how each of these emotions either activates or deactivates your nervous systems, your different regions of the body, and which kind of experiment was the best to measure the activation. But words, just eliciting words randomly, listening to those words, feeling these kind of emotions just because someone is angry and makes you angry is going to be related to the activation. Stories, short stories, such as the one that you see in a post in social media, or such as the one that you can see by scrolling any kind of social platform, also had a very a regular activation, let's say. And look at the movies. Look at the movies, how they impacted the emotional state. And look here, which, for example, watching things that make you feel good activates your body in a positive way. So watching something that is positive, watching something that makes you forget sometimes that you are living in this chaotic world and giving you more positive emotions will raise your level of activation into a positive cascade of emotions. So try to watch more of those things and less of the disgust, the things, because as you can see here, for example, sadness, fear is also in some high levels, let's say, higher levels of activation when we are witnessing these kind of scenes, either by news or by clips or by shorts, whatever the name they use in the platform. And just witnessing this and repeating these clips and things will activate your body or also paralyze your body and make you feel in sadness, complete sadness, and paralyzing your body and your brain also. Faces or interaction with people, reactions of people in the street, in the gym, in your job, in your family, in wherever you are. This is one of the also the experiments that demonstrated a high activation, for example, in terms of anger. This was starting to get very high in terms of the activation that we are seeing. Sadness, as you can see, is paralyzing your body, and how we feel in terms of what we can do, your own worth, feeling worthy. If you are feeling paralyzed, if you are feeling neglected, if you are feeling isolated due to the sadness that you are witnessing, you are not reacting in the same way, and you are infecting other people of this apathy that you are feeling. Now, in the body, this is the most graphic representation of how we are going to see the things. So anger activates, remember, the colors that go from yellow to orange to red represents the activation of the body. And in terms of negative and positive, the activation can be in both sides. So it is also, for example, happiness, a very positive emotion that activates your whole body, feeling happy, trying to feel not happy all the time, but try to assess your state, your emotional state, and try to move from anger that is activating your body, but in a negative way, and it's representing your lungs, is representing your throat, your brain, the things that you can do with your extremities, upper extremities, and this is just going to be activation, negative activation. Fear. Also, look at this, the lungs and your gastrointestinal system is being activated by fear. So no wonder So many people right now have many gastrointestinal issues, many throat issues, and confusion in their brain. They cannot think, they just act in a very irrational way. Disgust, the same, what we are witnessing. And look here, the activation is very, very red in terms of the gastrointestinal system. So look at this and relate and connect the dots of how this kind of representation in your body, activation in your body, negative activation, it's going to be translated into an emotion that you cannot control many times in terms of the effects that it's provoking. And imagine if you swallow all of this disgust, all of this rejection, all of this neglect, isolation, you are going to feel a lot of symptoms in your stomach, in your throat. So what else? Happiness, as I mentioned, positive activation. Sadness, look at how the limbs are completely inactivated. This blue color represents the activation of your extremities. You cannot do anything. You are not worthy. You don't feel that you can act. You don't feel that you have a response. And also, it activates your lungs, your throat, and the limbic system of your emotions. So pay attention to these regions because they are extremely important. Surprise, positive activation of the upper part of the body. Neutral, of course, we don't see anything. Anxiety, look at this. All of the region of your lungs is becoming extremely activated. The part of your gastrointestinal system. Love, all of the region of your body is becoming positively activated. You feel very, very similar to happiness. Depression, completely inactivated, completely in the mode of not being able to do anything with your life. You don't feel worthy, you don't feel that you can act, you don't feel that you can do certain things, and that leads to other states that can translate into a very, very disturbing effect that we know, and that's why many of the spiking statistics of suicidal attempts and all of those things, because you feel helpless. You feel that your life is not worthy, etc., etc., etc. Contempt, you activate positively these regions. Pride, you activate positive in this region. Shame, look at this in terms of shame. That's why when people feel shame, they have these headaches, migraines, throat issues, breathing issues, pulmonary diseases, stress in their gastrointestinal system, envy, throat, lungs, your heart. It is just as if these experiments represent exactly the heart. Once you start feeling envy for people, you start damaging your heart. Look at this image and you can link the emotion to what you are feeling and how you are processing that emotion in your body. So this is a very broad and general representation in the body. We are not going deep into the organs, but we know that many of these translate to particular organs and specific responses. And as I mentioned, if you don't process these kind of emotions, this will be translated into epigenetic effects that you will feel in your body, and that eventually you will start to translate into many of the reactions that you are going to have. So I hope that this deep information, that this detailed information of the experiments, of the science, how it's moving beyond just identifying the emotions and knowing what you are feeling. This relates to our body state, to our mind state, to the expression of the symptoms, and how we can handle practically all of the range of diseases that we are seeing by identifying our emotional state, by working with our emotions, by journaling, by recording yourself if you don't like to journal, by listening to something that calms your mind, either a meditation, either some solfeggio frequencies, either some classical music, whatever it is that calms your mind, making contact with nature, taking a walk, doing exercise. There is plenty of things that you can do, but you need time for you. You need at least 10 to 15 minutes to decompress, to detoxify of many of these emotional loads that you are receiving throughout your day, because throughout your day you receive stimuli from short stories, posts, videos, or listening just to people, or interacting just with people that is activated already in a negative emotion. So take into account this information. If you like the video, if you think this is going to help people that are coping with these emotional states, please help me to share this information, and also subscribe to the channel in YouTube, because I release every week an episode of these specific topics of the 5 pillars of health. And I try to help you as much as possible to understand that we are linked into 5 extremely important pillars of our health. Thank you very much for your attention. Have a wonderful day, and help me to share, to comment, to ask questions, interact more with me and with the channel, so that we can make it better each day. And of course, if you are willing to support these videos that I am just doing to help people to understand the 5 pillars with science, wellness, and spirituality, please support me in my website. There is a link where you can support with as much as you can. Thank you very much for your attention, for your help. Have a wonderful day. We will listen to each other in our next episode. Thank you. Bye.